Okay, we're going to get started. Right on. I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. Sobriety date's April 8, 1989. How we open this meeting? Let's do the Serenity Prayer. What do you think? We bring acknowledge some God into this thing. What do we need for a good meeting, Katie? God. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can't. And the wisdom to know the difference. And who are you, Katie? What's going on?
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Right on. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Katie and I help facilitate this thing. We have, as everybody knows, meetings all through the week. That'll probably be put in the chat and all that. For those that are following along, pretty exciting stuff. We're just getting into the doctor's opinion. Bill's story, just see who was following along there, right? So, what's the purpose of Bill's story, you ask? Well, that's a good question. As we get into this thing, we just finished the doctor's opinion, and he gave us a kind of an overview on the basis of his understanding. And then what happened was the witnessing of the miracle that took place in his facility of people finding an answer to a dilemma that had him kind of baffled with certain types of alcoholics. In the letter, in the first page of the doctor's opinion, he talked about this guy coming into his facility for the third time and acquiring some information that he put into practice, and him and others seem to have recovered as the result of the application of these things. And as he went through this, he says, the message of these people that he witnessed had to have depth and weight. And he also talked about frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices for people like us, right? Either people pleading with us or us pleading with ourselves, right? Then he talked about that there's something going on physically with us when we take a drink. Then he kind of hints at the fact that doesn't really hint at the fact. He kind of says, maladjusted, full-fledged from reality and downright mental defectives, right? Then he gets into this idea that these people are trying to quit drinking, but they find themselves drinking again. And this is repeated over and over unless these people can experience an entire cycle of change. There's very little hope of their recovery. And then on the other hand, he talks about once these people have experienced this change, they're able to control their desire or thought or whatever, his kind of observation of these people not returning to drinking. Then he gives two examples as he closes out the doctor's opinion. Then we get into Bill's story. We hear a lot of different ideas about Bill's story. Like Bill's story, try to find yourself in it, read it for identification. But really what it is a case study on what they talked about in the beginning, how they showed us, how they're going to show us how they recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And how it works, it talks about what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. So Bill's a story, an example of that. What we were like, what happened, and what we're like now. And it's quite interesting if you did a survey on what people think the what happened part is quite interesting. And it starts back in the doctor's opinion. It says, unless these people experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of their recovery. So that's really the turning point. As long as we're still afflicted with this illness, we're never really going to have gains in our life. And what makes you say that? The doctor noticed Bill, or this person who came back to his facility for the third time, had great earning potential. Right? Meaning if he didn't have this illness, he would have been quite the successful businessman. But there was something else determining his fate. And it was this illness. And as this illness progressed, so did his life. So we're going to kind of have a kind of overview of that and look at that. What do you think? We're into that? We good? We're ready to rock and roll? Everybody have their book, piece of paper, pen. We'll kind of, right? And we'll kind of go through this thing. So Katie, what do you think? Why don't we start with a bit on, just to get started here on the first page.
First page of Bill's story?
Yeah, that's a good start.
Page 1. Okay. Bill's story. War fever ran high in the New England town to which new young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned. And we were flattered when the first citizens took us to their homes, making us feel heroic. Here was love, applause, war, moments sublime with intervals hilarious. I was part of life at last, and in the midst of excitement, I discovered liquor.
I like how he says, I discovered it. Not that I had a drink. I discovered it. Like the magic, like something mystical happened as he took this drink. And so I always talk about, like, alcohol doesn't cause alcoholism, it reveals it, right? And kind of get into the doctor's pursuit. As he goes through here, he talks about discovering liquor, and then there's another pivoting point here. Go ahead.
I forgot the strong warnings and the prejudice of my people concerning drink. In time we sailed for over there. I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol.
Yeah, so what's becoming a solution to the human condition?
Yeah, alcohol.
Alcohol, that euphoric feeling, that drinks we see others taking with impunity, that magic in a drink that not everybody really experiences, right? That sense of ease and comfort, that and that tasted so good. You know what would go good with this? Another one.
We landed in England. I visited Worcester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is ne'er forgot, whether he dieth by musket or by pot.
So which is really interesting, they're not talking like the same thing we're talking about, like pot, right? They're talking something else, and that's when they used to make cold brew back in the day, right? They used to kind of... Anyways, so as we go along here, we go, and where are we going? Let's go over to the next page here, and we look at the progression, right? Top of the page, I took a night course.
I took a night course and obtained employment as an investigator for a sureties company. The drive for success was on. I'd proved to the world I was important. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceive their best projects when drunk.
So long talks for us means we just keep at them until they don't care anymore. That's the long talk, right? Just keep at them. Bullshit them, baffle them with enough BS that is just like, forget it, right? So we see he's failing a law course here. Over on the next page, page 3, my drinking. Oh, here we go. For the next few years, let's go with that.
Okay, middle of the page. For the next few years, fortune threw money and applause my way. I had arrived. My judgment and ideas were followed by many to the tune of paper millions. The great boom of the late 20s was seething and swelling. Drink was taking an important and exhilarating part in my life. There was loud talk in the jazz places uptown. Everyone spent in thousands and chattered in millions. Scoffers would scoff and be damned. I made a host of fair-weathered friends.
Yeah, we're good at that, eh? Huh? That's why we like bouncing around meetings. Go ahead.
My drinking assumed more serious proportions and continuing all day and almost every night. The remonstrance of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. There were many unhappy scenes in our sumptuous apartment. There had been no real infidelity, for loyalty to my wife helped at times by extreme drunkenness.
you know his wife's watching him write this, eh? We'll just leave it at that.
In 1929, I contracted golf fever. We went at once to the country, my wife to a club, while I started out to overtake Walter Hagen. Liquor caught up with me much faster than I came up behind Walter. I began to be jittery in the morning. Golf permitted drinking every day and every night. It was fun to carom around the exclusive course which had inspired such an awe in me as a lad. I acquired the impeccable coat of a tan one sees upon the well-to-do. The local banker watched me whirl fat checks in and out of his till with amused skepticism. Abruptly, in October 1929, hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange. After one of those days of inferno, I wobbled from a hotel bar to a brokerage office. It was 8 o'clock, 5 hours after the market closed. The ticker still clattered. I was staring at an inch of tape which bore the inscription XYZ negative 32. It had been at 52 that morning. I was finished, and so were many friends. The papers reported men jumping to their death from the towers of high finance. That disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar.
How many people? Eh?
Yeah.
I got a problem happening here. Wife, employer, kids, something happening. I'll go, the great remover, I'll go just have another drink, right? You hear people say, oh, I lost everything. No, you didn't lose everything. They lost you, right? They're still carrying on with their lives, right? We're going back to the only solution we know for the human dilemma. He's got the physical allergy happening, problems happening. I'm going to go have another drink.
And look what happens. It works for him, right? He gets the relief that's always there. That disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar. My friends dropped several million since 10 o'clock. So what? Tomorrow was another day. As I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. Next morning, I telephoned a friend in Montreal. He had plenty of money left and thought I had better go to Canada.
I like that. Go through the Rolodex. You're in trouble. Have a friend with money. I'm entitled to some of that. Anybody ever think like, I'm entitled to his money? He's still got money. I'm entitled to some of that, right? So he's off to Montreal, right? Next page. Liquor ceased to be a luxury.
Okay, liquor ceased to be a luxury. It became a necessity. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day, and often 3 got to be routine. Sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s, and I would pay my bills at the bars and delicatessens. This went on endlessly, and I began to waken very early in the morning, shaking violently. A tumbler full of gin, followed by half a dozen bottles of beer, would be required if I were to eat any breakfast. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation. And there were periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hope.
Well, why wouldn't he think that? Look, you get periods of sobriety. I don't know if anybody's ever relapsed in this group, right? And then you kind of get some sobriety, and then you relapse, and you think you were successful the last time, right? So if I just did more of what I did the last time, I still got control of this thing. So it doesn't have me, I have it. Big difference. And why wouldn't he think that? He has no other reason not to think that. It's just a matter of just staying on guard. You know what I mean? Maybe a bit of acceptance and letting go and whatever the situation may be. But he had this thing. So go ahead.
Yeah, just don't do it, he's thinking. But gradually things got worse. The house was taken over by the mortgage holder. My mother-in-law died. My wife and father-in-law became ill. Then I got a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at a low point of 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. Then I went on a prodigious bender.
So we see here in 1929 he contracted Gulf fever. So we got 3 years happening here, right? And then in 1932. Right? So there's 3 years of going on like this, periods of sobriety. And that's like a lot of people within our fellowship, right? They have some consequences. They see there's a problem. They come into AA. They think they have control of this thing. They just put the plug in the jug and they start doing all this stuff, moral psychology or whatever. Join the gym, buy some Lululemon pants, get some incense, do something constructive, start regaining their life again. Because I got to get a job related and all these things. And they stay sober for a period of time. And then we don't see them anymore. And then they come back and I really mean it this time. Right? And they exert themselves more and something takes them out again. And then they come back. I really mean it. I really, really mean it this time. All the other times. Right? And that'd be kind of like what's happening here. Right? And so he sees he needs to get sober, but his inability to stay sober. Right? Something keeps on happening in his life that alters his desire, wish, and hopes. Right? So if it was a matter of just learning your lesson or being able to change, you think he would have done that by now, right? So now we see the progression of alcoholism starting to happen in his life, right? Go ahead.
I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as one drink. I was through forever. Before then, I had written lots of sweet promises, but my wife happily observed that this time I meant business.
And would he pass the lie detector's test?
He means it.
Yeah, why wouldn't, he has no other information, right? Why wouldn't he? Except his own experience, and his own experience won't out him, right? His brain will, well, you haven't been successful so far, but this time I mean business, right? And so it should be a good story from here on out, right? That's the what happened part, right? This time I mean business, but it's not the what happened part. It's still circumstantial sobriety, right? He still thinks he has a hold of this thing. That's why it's so important when new people show up that we start working with them. That when they bring up the topic of alcoholism or step one, we explain what that is, right? And the more uncomfortable they become with the idea of this affliction that they may be suffering from, the better off they'll be to look at a solution other than themselves, right? Go ahead.
Right. Shortly afterwards, I came home drunk. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve? I simply didn't know. It hadn't even come to mind. Someone had pushed a drink my way, and I had taken it. Was I crazy? I began to wonder, for such an appalling lack of perspective seemed near being just that.
So as they're talking about this progression here, we see that he doesn't want to drink. He's not pondering it. He's not obsessed with it. He doesn't want to do it. Right? He's not talking about any other condition except that he doesn't want to drink. Right? And he means it, but shortly afterward he comes home drunk. And now he's questioning his own sanity because now he's looking at the situation and he's not going, oh, I have a spiritual malady or I lack acceptance or surrender. He says there's something fundamentally going on within my thinking that has me alarmed. Like he has more insight at this point than I ever did. Right? Like 11 years in and out. He has more insight to what's happening within himself. He sees he cannot take so much as one drink because when he drinks, something seems to happen to him that makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. So he has that insight, but yet that doesn't stop him from drinking. Then he has the idea that I can't take alcohol, or I can't take the drink no matter what, basically, right? I was through forever. And then he finds himself drinking again. Right? What do you think of that? You ever have that problem, Katie?
Sure. And you see, now he starts questioning himself because every time he said he was done, he meant it. And I can relate to that. But then at some point, I would convince myself that I must not have meant it yet. I guess I didn't mean it. You know, at the time, I could have passed a lie detector test. And then I convinced myself that that wasn't it. But this time, it's different. Because everything's gotten so much worse again that this time, this has to be it. And it's baffling, right? You see him, he starts questioning his sanity now, and I can completely relate to that. Like, it didn't make sense. How come I could put my mind to so many things in life, and I could make it happen, but for this, I wanted to stop drinking more than anything, and I had all the reasons in the world to stop doing it, and I couldn't stop doing it. It's baffling. I love it. He's starting to see it here. This is a big part of the step one experience, is realizing that you never had the control over it.
And that's true. And when people say relapse isn't a part of my story, we see relapse as very much a part of his story. He's going against something, an undesirable effect that's happening in his life that he doesn't want happening. Like there's something happening that he doesn't want happening. He wants this effect, right? It's like if he was a smoker, he'd make a firm decision not to smoke, and then when he started again, that would be a relapse into an undesirable situation that we're trying to avoid. It's kind of like the same thing, a relapse, back to an undesirable state, right? That he's trying to avoid or not happen anymore. Go ahead.
Renewing my resolve, I tried again. What do you think happens?
Well, I think it's going to be a good story from here on out.
There you go. Brace for impact, that's what you always say. Some time passed, and confidence began to be replaced by cocksureness. I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. One day I walked
So hold on. Now I have what it takes. So if you've been around a little while, you hear this all the time in meetings. You have a new person, got 3-month chip, 4-month chip, they get asked to share. And what they share is, I don't even think about it anymore. The obsession is left. I have no desire whatsoever. They're explaining a condition other than what the book's explaining as the condition, right? The condition in the book explains something that we can't see, feel, and touch, right? And he's experiencing that. There's a condition that has him. He doesn't have it, right? Why we like the idea of it being an obsession is that means we're in control of it. It's not in control of us. But we've seen so far, there's no wrestling with the idea that he could control and enjoy his drinking. He's one of the founders. He doesn't want to drink, but he finds himself drinking. Right?
And he's definitely not an obsession, because you can see even back on the last page where had been my high resolve. I simply didn't know. It hadn't even come to mind. He's not sitting there wrestling with the idea of doing it. It just suddenly, and if you've ever experienced that yourself, you know exactly what he's talking about. At least I think people like the idea of the obsession, because if it's an obsession, I can see it happening. I can hear it. I know I'm thinking about it. And if I know I'm thinking about it, then there's something humanly I can do.
It's a choice.
Yeah. But if it has you, there's no choice. You're going.
100%. So a little farther down, the mind and the body.
The mind and the body, bottom paragraph of page 6. The mind and the body are marvelous mechanisms, for mine endured this agony 2 more years. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse when the morning terror and madness were on me. Again I swayed dizzily before an open window or a medicine cabinet where there was poison, cursing myself for a weakling. There were flights from city to country and back as my wife and I sought escape. Then came the night when the physical and mental torture was so hellish I feared I would burst through my window, sash and all. Somehow I managed to drag my mattress to a lower floor lest I suddenly leap. A doctor came with a heavy sedative. Next they found me drinking both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks.
So this is 5 years of the progression going on here, and him trying everything to combat it, right? Okay.
People feared for my sanity, so did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking, and I was 40 pounds underweight. My brother-in-law is a physician, and through his kindness and that of my mother, is placed in a nationally known hospital for the mental and physical rehabilitation of alcoholics. Under the so-called belladonna treatment, my brain cleared.
So this is the first time him going into treatment, right? Is it like an intervention, right? His brother-in-law, they're helping him go through. He's not paying for it. Somebody else. He's on somebody else's dime here, right?
Hydrotherapy and mild exercise helped much. Best of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally.
How many 2 symptoms did the doctor say he suffered from? 2.
Bodily.
Oh, okay, bodily and mentally. He didn't throw in the spiritual part yet? No, bodily and mentally. Alcoholism, it consists of two symptoms. Anything more than that, it's not based on our idea, right?
Mm-hmm. It relieved me somewhat to learn that in alcoholics, the will is amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor, though it often remains strong in other respects. My incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained.
So listen, it was explained to him that you can't stop yourself from doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's the same thing like people saying in step, I did step 1. Once you do step 1, you're okay. It makes no sense. That logic makes no sense whatsoever. He's making sense of something that doesn't make sense. On one hand, he's saying, he explains why I've been so weak in combating this thing in the past, but now that I know that, I'll be okay. Right?
Yeah. I got kicked out of treatment one time, understanding step 1. Okay, now I get it. I just really can't do it. I just can't drink that first drink. You know what happened? Madness. I crashed my car sober, thinking, I couldn't leave my apartment. Everything, I had nothing. I just knew that I couldn't drink, and I was absolutely insane. I didn't know.
Crazy.
All right.
So let's see how he feels about step 1 now, and knowing about his problem. He's in treatment. Let's see his experience here. Should be a good story from here on out.
Here we go. My incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained. Understanding myself now, I fared forth in high hope. For 3 or 4 months the goose hung high. I went to town regularly and even made a little money. Surely this was the answer, self-knowledge.
How many were hoping that, eh? Surely this is their self-knowledge. I'm hoping. Just don't drink no matter what. Just don't drink no matter what. I seem to be drinking no matter what. Maybe I'm a little different than these other people. Put the plug in the jug. Think it through. Let it go. Turn it over. Do something. Right? Bring it to a meeting. Call somebody. Think it through. Oh my God. Okay.
But it was not, for the frightful day came when I drank once more. The curve of my declining moral and bodily health fell off like a ski jump. Rather, after a time, I returned to the hospital. This was the finish, the curtain, it seemed to me. My weary and despairing wife was informed that it would all end with heart failure during delirium tremens, or I would develop wet brain, perhaps within a year.
So this is the second time in treatment. Is he having the same experience as the first time? No, there's a totally different experience. The first time he's feeling good, right? Self-knowledge, my condition was explained. I left, right? The goose hung high. Now he's back in treatment. He's not feeling so good. Yeah. Right? He's having a way different experience in treatment this time than he did the last time, yes? But he's in the same facility, surrounded by the same people, but he's having a different experience, right? The gravity of his situation is upon him. So he has hit bottom. Yeah. He has the gift of desperation. We hear this.
Enough?
Huh?
Is it enough?
He's surrendered. He's done it all. All the stuff we hear is earmarks for change. But what happens is, let's see what happens with all this stuff. What he wouldn't do to go to anything to change his story. So he has all the earmarks, but there's something missing. Let's find out what that is. Go ahead.
He would soon have to give me over to the undertaker of the asylum. They did not need to tell me. I knew and almost welcomed the idea. It was a devastating blow to my pride. I, who had thought so well of myself and my abilities, of my capacity to surmount obstacles, was cornered at last. Now I was to plunge into the dark, joining that endless procession of sots who had gone on before. I thought of my poor wife. There had been much happiness after all, what I would not give to make amends, but that was over now. No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksands stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master.
So this goes with the doctor's opinion. Right? This is repeated over and over, regardless of your position on the situation, unless something fundamentally changes at a core level that he can't bring about by himself, the psychic change or spiritual experience, his experience will remain the same, regardless of how desperate, how far he goes, or how willing he is. Unless somebody's going to bring him a solution sufficient enough for the application to bring about a change, he's going to die an alcoholic death. That's what's happening here. So the gift of desperation without a solution is still the gift of desperation. Right? A surrender without a conversion or a solution is still surrender. Right? You're dealing with somebody that don't take prisoners. So surrender ain't going to work. Right? You're dealing with an enemy that don't take prisoners, right? So it doesn't understand English. You're pretty much... So this has been his story. Get sober, relapse. Get story, relapse. And it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse, right?
Yep, sure is. Trembling, I stepped from the hospital a broken man. Fear sobered me for a bit. Then came the insidious insanity of that first drink. You notice it's not him thinking about it. Then came the insidious, the slow, gradual onset of insanity of that first drink. And on Armistice Day, 1934, I was off again. Everyone became resigned to the certainty that I would have to be shut up somewhere or would stumble along to a miserable end. How dark it is before the dawn. In reality, that was the beginning of my last debauch. I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. Near the end of that bleak November, I sat drinking in my kitchen. With a certain satisfaction, I reflected there was enough gin concealed about the house to carry me through that night and the next day. My wife was at work. I wondered whether I dare hide a full bottle of gin near the head of our bed. I would need it before daylight. My musing was interrupted by the telephone. The cheery voice of an old school friend asked if he might come over. He was sober. It was years since I could remember his coming to New York in that condition. I was amazed. Rumor had it that he had been committed for alcoholic insanity. I wondered how he had escaped. Of course he would have dinner, and then I could drink openly with him. Unmindful of his welfare, I thought only of recapturing the spirit of other days. There was that time when we had chartered an airplane to complete a jag. His coming was an oasis in this dreary desert of futility. The very thing an oasis. Drinkers are like that. The door opened and he stood there, fresh-skinned and glowing. There was something about his eyes. He was inexplicably different. What had happened? I pushed a drink across the table and he refused it. Disappointed, but curious, I wondered what had gotten into the fellow. He wasn't himself. Come, what's all this about? I queried. He looked straight at me, simply but smiling. He said, I've got religion. I was aghast. So that was it. Last summer, an alcoholic crackpot. Now I suspected a little cracked about religion. He had that starry-eyed look. Yes, the little boy was on fire, all right, but bless his heart, let him rant. Besides, my gin would last longer than his preaching. But he did no ranting. In a matter-of-fact way, he told how two men had appeared in court, persuading the judge to suspend his commitment. They had told of a simple religious idea and a practical program of action. That was 2 months ago, and the result was self-evident. It worked. He had come to pass his experience along to me if I cared to have it. I was shocked, but interested.
See,
Certainly.
and that's a big difference. Like, there's talking about the steps, your understanding of the steps, and the experience of the steps. Two different things altogether. We pass on our experience, and if they want what we have, then we talk about how we got it. Right? That's the experience. What's the what happened part? Was I had a change sufficient enough to bring about recovery that allowed me to be free from this thing that's killing you. Right? That's basically the conversation that's happening here, right? Bill sees there's a change in this guy. Obviously, when was the last time this guy was sober? He's one of his friends, so he's kind of like, first thing he noticed about it, this guy was his eyes. There's something about him, right? And so this is the conversation. One's having an experience, the other one's dying of alcoholism, right? One's come to pass on his experience, very excited about the idea, and the other one's not so happy about the idea. It's just like meetings with newcomers, right? Right? We're more happier for the newcomer than the newcomer is because we know what's available here, right? Like, you know, and the resistance is strong with us. It's really wild when you look back how resistant we are to the way of life that we're living. It's pretty amazing. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. He talked for hours. Is that where I am?
Yep.
Okay. I was shocked but interested. Certainly I was interested. I had to be, for I was hopeless. He talked for hours. Childhood memories rose before me. I could almost hear the sound of the preacher's voice as I sat on still Sundays way over there on the hillside.
So he says he talked for hours, right? So they're both sitting at the kitchen table. They're both not 2 minutes, not like kind of talk for hours here. They're having a conversation. They're getting real about what's going on and stuff like that, right? And then as they go through this is kind of interesting. And he talked about here, but my friend sat before me on page 11.
Okay, middle of the page.
Hopefully you've read through this week and we're hitting the highlights here. That's the whole idea of this thing. So when you're reading this is the highlight of the story, right, that we're going into. Anyways, it's self-explanatory. Go ahead.
But my friend sat before me and he made the point-blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable. Society was about to lock him up. Like myself, he had admitted complete defeat.
See the difference here? He's going in his mind here. Like myself, he had committed complete defeat. But he's having a different experience than me. Just because you've done step one doesn't give you the experience that his friend's talking about. right? He had to go through a course of action in order to obtain that. That's why in the doctor's opinion, it talks about these people becoming sold on the ideas contained in this book. And as the result, right? So we're hoping to have a result without doing anything. Right? If I could have this thing that by really not doing it, wouldn't that be nice, right? Not really. If you're an alcoholic, it's just a matter of time before you drink again, right? Go ahead.
Then he had in effect been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from the scrap heap to a level of life better than the best he had ever known. Had this power originated in him? Obviously it had not. There had been no more power in him than there was in me in that moment. And this was none at all.
So had that power originated, did he create it? Mm-hmm. And he's saying, no, obviously there's something else at work here because there's no more power in him than there is in me in this moment, but he's having a different experience than me. Right?
That floored me. It began to look as though religious people were right after all. Here was something at work in a human heart, which had done the impossible. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then. Never mind the musty past. Here sat a miracle directly across the kitchen table.
So two things have happened on this page. Bill reconfirms the step one experience. And now he's having the step two experience of his ideas being shifted around the solution that's being offered to him. Something is shifted about this idea of my ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then and there. Never mind the misty past. There's been a shift in his thinking, and that's what we do when we talk to people. So where this shift for most of us comes is later in we agnostics. It helps us navigate through our thinking a bit to see what's being presented in such a way as palatable for us to continue on. Right? So Bill's having a shift from the thinking that he was having earlier, right? His friend was going on, well, I have enough gin, let him rant on, right? Like not even interested in what he's having to say, right? He's just glad his buddy's there. Now he's having a different experience through the continuation of talking between his problem and the solution being offered. Really cool stuff, right? So Ebby's doing step 12, right? What we call step 12 work, and Bill's being introduced to step 2. Yeah. Right? And step 2 is the course of action that Ebby talked about that got him the experience that he had. Very important. Go ahead.
I saw that my friend was much more than inwardly reorganized. He was on different footing. His roots grasped new soil. Despite the living example of my friend, there remained in me the vestige of old prejudice. The word God still aroused a certain antipathy. When the thought was expressed that there might be a God personal to me, this feeling was intensified. I didn't like the idea. I could go for such conceptions as creative intelligence, universal mind, or spirit of nature, but I resisted the thought of a czar of the heavens, however loving his sway may be. I've since talked with scores of men who have felt the same way. My friend suggested what then seemed a novel idea. He said, why don't you choose your own conception of God?
Not make up your own God. Mm-hmm. Choose your own conception of what's being presented. Right? So the czars of the heaven, we don't care what you call it, but the main point is, are you willing to believe that there's something greater than you? Right? And pursue this thing that's being kind of offered, right? So his friend's offering him a solution. He's having a hard time, not so much with what his friend's offering, but what he's thinking in regard to what his friend is saying. He can't get past his own thinking, right? Yeah. And that's what most of us, so most of us, when we argue, we're not arguing with the collective understanding, we're arguing with our own understanding. And a lot of us, unless we find a way to get past our own thinking, we're not going to be able to achieve what's being offered here, right, or by obtaining it. So he's saying here, what's different is, my friend suggested then what seemed a novel idea. Why don't you choose your own conception? Conception is the idea of being presented an idea and the course of action to bring about something. When you get a model, you open on the box, you have what the model looks like. Inside, you have the instructions to bring this about. Conception, an idea course of action to bring this about. Conception, right? The formulating of an idea or game plan to bring about the desired results as explained earlier, right? Choose the right conception. Go ahead.
That statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered many years. I stood in the sunlight at last. It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself.
So that's interesting. It was only a matter of being willing to believe. I don't have to have that relationship. A lot of people talk about step 2 like they have to have this relationship with God. All we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sin. Do I believe that this is obtainable, workable, or I can get the same experience that he's having if I did what he did? And that's where he is at with this thing, right? It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. What else is required?
Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. I saw that growth could start from that point upon a foundation of complete willingness. I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would.
So he's looking at the problem. He's looking at the solution. He comes to terms with a conception that works for him. I can go with the czars of the heaven or whatever. It's only a matter of being willing to believe that there's a power greater than myself, and to kind of, what did he say here? To do what his friend did, right? I might build what I saw in my friend. So if I did what he did, I'd get what he got, right? So he's sitting at the kitchen table. Would I have it? Yes. So he does steps 1, 2, and 3 with his friend, but nothing's changed. But he has all the information necessary, right? And on the next page, he confirms his step 3 by going to treatment for the 3rd time, right? So they talk about here on page 13 at the hospital.
Okay, top of the page. At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol the last time. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium tremens. There I humbly offered myself to God, as I then understood him, to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without him I was lost. I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend take them away root and branch. I have not had a drink since. My schoolmate visited me, and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. We made a list of people I had hurt towards whom I felt resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to write all such matters to my utmost ability. I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. Never was I to pray for myself, except as my request bore on my usefulness to others. Then only might I expect to receive, but that would be in great measure. My friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator, that I would have the elements of a way of living which answered all my problems. Belief in the power of God, plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain the new order of things were the essential requirements.
So we see here, this is the what happened part, right? And the difference this time in treatment compared to the other 2 times is somebody's taken them through a course of action. And that seems to be most of our experiences within AA. The difference that most of us have had is somebody approached us, took us through a course of action, or we went through a big book workshop and went through a course of action that created the change. Absent of that participation in this solution kept on leading to my demise. And we see here, when he says, my friend promised when these things were done, he hasn't fulfilled his whole commitment. He still has to approach these people. He has to do all these things. But he has the recipe on how to get connected. I was to test my new, I was to test my thinking with the new God consciousness within. I was to sit quietly. So we see that's our step 11. So he has this stuff in place before he sets out, as we see in the story here. Go ahead. So let's go back with my friend Promise. That was worth going over twice.
Okay, let's go back. Are we back on page 13?
Yeah.
Yeah, back on 13. My friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator. That I would have the elements of the way of living which answered all my problems. Belief in the power of God plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to maintain and to establish and maintain the new order of things were essential requirements.
So the recipe is willingness, honesty, and humility. He didn't talk about the steps. I got to do this step, that step, this. He talks about the principles that keep him connected. Totally. Right? The process that his friend took him through was secondary. Right? Yeah. Now. Right? So it's like when you need a job, I need to get a job. And then you get a job, what's the second thing is I need to keep it. And that's where he's at. He's got this connection now. Now he needs to keep it, right? Go ahead.
Cool. Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all.
Now go home and work on myself endlessly, and every time I get a chance, talk about me. He's talking about this relationship is the paramount, the most important thing in his life now. Why? Because he's had an experience. Nobody needs to explain it to him anymore. There's something fundamentally shifted inside of him, right, that he's aware of. That's kind of becomes the foundation to his whole experience, right? Go ahead.
These were revolutionary and drastic proposals, but the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. There was a sense of victory followed by such a peace and serenity as I had ever known.
Accepted them means did them. Okay, go ahead.
There was an utter confidence. I felt lifted up as though the great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. For a moment I was alarmed and I called my friend the doctor to ask if I were still sane. He listened in wonder as I talked. Finally he shook his head, saying, "Something has happened to you I don't understand, but you better hang on to it. Anything is better than the way you were." The good doctor now sees many men who have had such experiences. He knows they are real. While I lay in the hospital, the thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been so freely given me. Perhaps I could help some of them.
See, you can't fabricate that symptom of the spiritual experience, this change that happens. It is this overwhelming desire to go help other people, right? Before that, it's still all about first stage recovery is all about us still, right? We've seen that in Bill's story, yes? When this shift happened, it became something about other than him. It became about his relationship and other people, which is quite interesting, this shift that happened in his life, right?
Very cool. Yeah. While I lay in the hospital, the thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been so freely given me. Perhaps I could help some of them. They, in turn, might work with others. My friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Particularly, it was imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead, he said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, he would surely drink again, and if he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. With us, it is just like that.
So that's his experience in the hospital and insights, right? As the result of the course of action, he entered a relationship with a power greater than himself. He had a profound shift that the thought he might help other people, right? Now I'm in my 37th year. Everybody that I've seen go through this has had the same experience, whether it be by the educational over it or the sudden. this overwhelming desire to help somebody else. It's like being lost at sea or being shipwrecked and you're in the water and you get pulled from the water and they bring you into the boat. You're still not out of the woods because the elements still have you. They bring you back to the main ship. They treat you. You get hypothermia. They treat you and all that. You leave the medical facility and you could go play pool, have something to eat, and watch TV. Or you could grab a handful of life jackets and get back in the boat and go help people who are still drowning. Right? Those who have had this experience, they can't watch TV, knowing those people are still in the water. And that's what Bill's having. Those who haven't had this experience are quite comfortable sitting at home. and not doing any of it. But that's for another meeting. Go ahead. So now he leaves, he has a recipe, a formula. And that's what the steps are. The steps are engaged in a vehicle, which is a formula that we engage in. And then it turns into a recipe. Second half of how it works talks about a recipe that we incorporate within our lives for spiritual growth and development. Here we go. Let's see this recipe.
The steps transform into principles which are applied to daily life. And even on the last page, my friend had emphasized the absolute necessary of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. He's not saying practice these steps every single day. He's like, apply these principles that you learned through these steps in your daily life.
It's not about working the steps. It's about getting connected. Service, go ahead.
Cool.
My wife.
My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution of their problems. It was fortunate for my old business associates to remain skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found little work.
This guy's got problems, but he has a solution that brings about a sense of ease and brings about an answer when applied. Right?
I was not too well at the time. I was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment.
So is that alcoholism or the human condition?
Human condition.
Plagued with the human condition, right?
This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink.
Why? Because if you're without the application of a solution, you're left with you. And pretty soon you become so crazy, you start thinking maybe a drink will help. Right? But because he's exhibiting insanity, he recognizes, there's something going on here, which is different than the state he was before doing this. Before doing this, he never got past this state. The insanity came upon him, he found himself drinking. Now he's becoming aware, hey, there's something going on here. I'm in a bit of trouble, right? I sense I'm in trouble. Well, what am I going to do about it? Well, what does he do about it?
This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Many times I've gone to my old hospital in despair. On talking to a man there, I would be amazingly lifted up and set on my feet. It is a design for living that works in rough going.
Yeah, if you're involved, there's going to be some rough going. Right? Yeah, there's a saying back when I was it says, it rains on the just and unjust. I don't know if you've ever heard that. God becomes our umbrella. Right? So I like that, right? I like that idea, right? I'm not exempt from it, but I'll be able to match calamity with serenity. I'll have a new harbor, a safe harbor, a resource within inside of me that when focused on what he's talking about here, it will create a shift, an experience. Go ahead.
It is a design for living that works in rough going. We commence to make many fast friends, and a fellowship has grown up among us, of which a wonderful thing is to feel a part. The joy of living we really have, even under pressure and difficulty. I've seen hundreds of families set their feet in the path that really goes somewhere. Have seen the most impossible domestic situations righted, feuds and bitterness of all sorts wiped out. I've seen men come out of asylums and resume a vital place in the lives of their families and communities. Yeah,
and anybody who's been sober a while, working with people, is the same experience. Yes, amazing situations. Even when you look at our stories of the people in this group, it's just mind-blowing. And that's the story of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? It's not my story. It's the story of Alcoholics Anonymous that's available to any one of us through this recipe, right?
Business and professional men have regained their standing. There is scarcely any form of trouble and misery which has not been overcome among us. In one western city and its environs, there are 1,000 of us in our families. We meet frequently so newcomers may find the fellowship they seek. At these informal gatherings, one may often see from 50 to 200 persons. We are growing in numbers and power.
Mind-boggling, eh? 1934, right? Mind-boggling to when they wrote the book. Anyways, go ahead.
An alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature.
You think?
Be yourself. An alcoholic. One poor chap committed suicide in my home. He could not or would not see our way of life. There is, however, a vast amount of fun about it. I suppose some would be shocked at our seeming worldliness and levity, but just underneath there's a deadly earnestness. Faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. Most of us feel we need to look no further for utopia.
That's a good word to look up. It's a pretty powerful word. Look no further for utopia. Go ahead.
We have it with us right here and now. Each day, my friend's simple talk in our kitchens multiplies itself in a widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill to men. Bill W., co-founder of AA, died January 24th, 1971.
That's pretty well. In 2014, AA composed of approximately 15,500 groups. Wow, that's pretty amazing stuff when you kind of think about it. From where it started, from a hospital bed, and this movement that happened for people like us, right? Because people like us die of alcoholism, right? And that's the same within our fellowship. Unless we get this, just because we're in a meeting, like Bill, just because he was in treatment doesn't mean he's safe, right? For us, there's a specific solution to a specific problem, right? And later on, we'll get in working with others and all that. But this is a pretty amazing story in the beginning of Alcoholics Anonymous, where Ebby went and found Bill. Bill didn't find Ebby, right? And the doctor witnessed this thing happening. So we've seen in Bill's life what he was like and the inability to shake what was happening to him, and his demise on the continuation where he would have died from this thing. Just a matter of time. We've seen Ebby show up in his life with a viable solution and a practical course of action that he made it palatable for Bill. Took Bill through a course of action the third time, right, that he had this change. He witnessed and walked him through this. That's what we call sponsorship. I know the book doesn't say sponsorship, but for lack of better words, right, sponsored him. Went and found him, carried this message to him, and walked him through it. Bill had this experience where he started working with other people. That's pretty wild thing. And what's really wild about is this doctor witnessed the whole thing. This doctor is witnessing this thing and gave this whole movement credibility. So we see in Bill's life what happened was the third time in treatment, he went through a course of action, had an experience. What he was like afterwards, he found a way of life that worked in rough going. He was having a different experience than the experience he was having previous to this spiritual experience or psychic change that he had, right? And he had a recipe that he put into into application. And here they talk about we learn to live one day at a time through the application of this. It's pretty wild. Katie, you want to add anything?
No, I think you nailed it. It was a great study.
That was good. I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed what I had to say. No, I'm just joking. So, before we ruin it any further, we have information and that. We have a discussion after. If you have any questions or whatever, live long and prosperous. May the force be with you. And how do we close this meeting? It's with the Serenity Prayer. What do we need for good life? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Right on. Let's.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.